guys, it's happening. It's finally happening. I'm doing my The Hobbit plus the Lord of the Rings trilogy review. This is long overdue. I mentioned that I was reading it probably in January. It is now March. It's taken me 2 months to finish all 4 books, which I don't know if that's good or not, but I'm doing the review. Let's do it now. That was a really weird intro, but like I said, I managed to finish off, if I can gather them here, I managed to finish off The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. And if you don't know, this is an epic fantasy series. The Hobbit is actually the prequel to the Lord of the Rings, but it is set in the same world, just I think 50 years or so apart. And it follows the adventures of hobbits, which are sort of half men, I guess. The creatures are called halflings, and they are not very big. They sort of live a life that's really chilled, really relaxed. They live in holes, and there are different sort of types of hobbits, I think, in according to where they live and what family they come from. But let's start off with The Hobbit. In The Hobbit, the story follows Bilbo Baggins, who lives in Bag End, which is a pretty big hole, and he lives by himself. And one day he gets a visit from Gandalf, which is the wizard, and I pronounce him Gandalf. I don't know if it's Gandalf or Gandalf, yada yada, and a couple of dwarves who are thieves, and he is taken on this adventure with them to a very, very far off place in search of a dragon by the name of Smaug, I'm pretty sure S-M-A-U-G, and they want to get their treasure back. It was very much a great adventure story. You know, anything, if you think about ignoring everything that you know, if you just think about fantasy, this is probably what encompasses the genre of fantasy. It's got adventure, it's got creatures that you would never think about, or you probably have that you hope would exist, but it doesn't, only in books like this, and a magnificent world. I found that, because I read this one first, it really helped me when I was reading Lord of the Rings, because it built a lot of background knowledge for me, and because Bilbo appears in Lord of the Rings as well, so I really could understand what he was talking to, like what he was talking about in the book, or in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Sorry, I'm just not making sense at the moment. And I could sort of, and I found that I liked Gandalf a lot more in the Lord of the Rings as well. So if you really wanted to start this series, I do suggest that you read The Hobbit first. It does come first chronologically as well. So yeah. I think the best thing that I liked about this was the world. It was simply amazing. It was very detailed, very thorough. I can almost visualize it. It's been a while since I read this though, probably a month, 2 months as I said. It didn't take that long to read. It was 350 pages. My edition here is 350 pages, so it wasn't too bad. It wasn't very extremely long, and it's just that, and the font wasn't extremely small. Like later when I show you the Lord of the Rings, you'll be just shocked. But what I didn't like was maybe the character Bilbo. I found him, like, I didn't enjoy him as much as I enjoy, and I know I'm comparing to the other series, but it's inevitable. I can't not do it. But I enjoyed the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings a lot more to Bilbo. The adventure here was sort of straightforward. They're on an adventure to find treasure. That's what they do. They encounter a lot of creatures, and I like that aspect. I really liked, you know, the addition of elves, goblins, dragons, and such. But in the end, I think I only gave this a 4 out of 5 because it did take a while to pick up. I sort of fell asleep in the beginning when I was reading it, which is really bad, but it picked up. It really did pick up once Bilbo started his adventure. It got a lot more action-packed. You get to know, what's his face? Gollum as well, and if you don't know who Gollum is, you'll understand his story in here. And this really does tie in with Lord of the Rings, because Bilbo finds something which ends up being the mission for the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. I don't know if I can say a lot more about this. I think the plot was very detailed. It was a solid plot from start to finish. You know, there's no fault with Tolkien's writing. That's why he's probably the father figure of fantasy or epic fantasy, because that's how good his adventure stories are. I mean, this was published in 1937 and even now people are still reading it. So it's like one of the classics for fantasies. I really strongly suggest that you do read this along with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because you won't be disappointed. I mean, I'm not a strong fantasy reader, but I really enjoyed it, and it really has put me into a fantasy mode. I thoroughly enjoy reading fantasy now. It's not something that, like, overall with this and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it's not something that I would suggest you read when you were young. Maybe, I think you could if you read when you were young, but I definitely have to go through these again, probably when I'm a lot older, because there was a lot of details that I had to take in, and it sort of just went whoosh over my head sometimes. I also gave this a 4 out of 5 because I kept zoning in and out of the story. I wasn't fully engaged at some points, and I guess that's why I sort of was like, oh, you know, don't really enjoy this as much. But do give this a go. That was a really wishy-washy review. Now, this series I thoroughly enjoyed. I think this was way better than the Hobbit, but I think it's because, you know, you spend a lot more time with the characters in this series. The world has expanded a lot. There's a lot more purpose to the story, and you know, even though there's this one main mission that Frodo, which is the main character, has to go on, you also get adventures, like different adventures with other characters, so the minor characters still play a pretty big part. In the Lord of the Rings, you have 4 hobbits by the name of Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin, and Frodo is Bilbo's heir, so he, you know, gains everything that Bilbo has, and Sam works for Frodo and Bilbo, yes. And then Merry and Pippin are their friends, and they end up on this adventure to destroy the ring that Bilbo discovers in The Hobbit, and the ring belongs to a evil lord by the name of Sauron, S-A-U-R-O-N. Please correct me if I'm wrong with any of these names. I am terrible at pronouncing names. But yeah, so he's called the Dark Lord, and he is up and coming. He is rising. He wants to take over the world, well, their world, and he lives in this place called Mount Doom, where he has a lot of dark magic going on, and he has produced creatures that, you know, carry out his deeds, that are basically very evil. And so Frodo and his company go on this journey that is guided by Gandalf, the wizard. And along the way they meet a lot of other people who also help them on a mission. So they meet Aragorn, Legolas, who is the elf, Gimli, who is the dwarf, Aragorn, pretty sure that's his name. That's all I can remember. Yeah, and they end up, you know, traveling from where they live, which is the Shire, all the way up to Mount Doom. And this was an amazing adventure. I was there with them 100%, if not maybe 98%. I did have this trouble of zoning in and out again. Maybe it's just Tolkien's writing and me. But it was simply amazing. I can see vividly what Frodo and his friends went through. It was spine-chilling at sometimes and very funny at others. My favourite character would have to be Aragorn, and my favourite creature would have to be the Ents, and you have to read it to know who and what the ents are because I don't want to spoil it, but they are simply amazing creatures. You get to meet orcs along the way, Nazgul, I think, flying horses, you know, the whole lot. And once they travel through the land, they come upon different creatures in different lands, like different forests, and it's just a whole new world open for you. And I think that's what I enjoyed the most about Tolkien's writing. You know, the world was spectacular. It was such a great world. It's probably not a world I would want to live in, but it's just a world that's really good to read, and I don't think I'll stop raving about the world. I really enjoyed every single character that was in this book, right from Frodo down to, you know, the minor characters. Aragorn is probably the character that most reflects bravery, you know, morals, like the right morals, loyalty, and just charm. He is very charming. I liked that about him. Yes, he had me swooning at some points. Gandalf is very wise. He and Dumbledore from Harry Potter probably go hand in hand, although Gandalf has a bit more edge because he probably has stronger powers. I think in Lord of the Rings I really liked how Tolkien gave everybody a role to play. Just because it was Frodo's responsibility to go and destroy the ring didn't mean that everyone else, you know, just tagged along and then sat back and did nothing. I also loved that the hobbits got to, you know, play a really big part in, just because they're so small doesn't mean that they can't do anything. They are the bigger men in the end, and they can achieve anything they want, and that's a really strong message that can be sent out to everybody, that, you know, it doesn't matter if what size you are or how you look or what you do. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. You just have to push on, and that's what these hobbits did. They pushed on, and they, you know, didn't let a lot of things stop them in their tracks. I think towards the end I realised that at some bits I was zoning in and out, and I was feeling sort of dreary reading it. Was maybe, and I think this is a speculation, but maybe because Tolkien made it that way, especially when we were with Frodo and Sam and their companions when they were going up to Mount Doom, especially in the last book. You know, they met with this country that was deserted, it was dry, it was dead, and it was basically death represented in this land. You can just tell that I'm on low batteries and it's announcing it to me. Sorry guys. Gotta wrap it up. You can tell that it's just wouldn't be a place that you wanted to be, and that Sam and Frodo were feeling it, and that I could feel it as well. And maybe that's why when I was reading it I was getting exhausted. And if Tolkien did that on purpose, then that was amazing, because, you know, reflection of writing, emotionally it drained me, really drained me, and I had to count the pages as to when I was finished. I think I enjoyed the bits with Aragorn the most though, and their adventures. It was really action packed. It was go 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 from there. I don't really know what else I should say about this series. I think that if you're a massive fantasy reader and you haven't read it, you really need to get onto it, because it's not something that you would want to miss out on. Definitely, I understand now why people rave about it. While there are movies, I'm going to marathon the movies because I am that into the story. I hope this has been some sort of a thorough review. I don't know what else to say. I haven't done a review in a while, so I'm not very used to it. But okay, my parents came home. It's seriously time to wrap up. Go, you know. I can't even end this. Oh my god. That is all for today, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.